So I'm going to talk about the ecological initiation, referring to my notes here. Just kidding. And so I just wrote a book on climate change. And for a while, I was hesitant even to tell people that, because as soon as they heard climate change, they were going to assume that they knew what I was saying. And what I am saying is different from what I have read in other material about climate change, which is why I wrote a book about it, because I thought I had something new to say, or different to say. So the primary viewpoint that I'm describing in the book is a breakdown of a deep kind of dualism between humans and nature, which says that human beings are the only full selves, and that nature is a lesser self, perhaps not even a conscious or intelligent or living being as a totality, but that Earth is kind of this rock with a fortunate scum of life on top of it that originated through some biochemical accident and is fragilely maintained. And the alternative that I'm working with is the living planet view, which says that Earth is a living being. And this has important consequences, both on the level of policy and our service to this being, but also on the level of perception. And I think that on the level of perception, it answers a bit of what Thomas was just saying about really like what prevents us from fully taking in the information that we have about the world. What enables us to read about the destruction of the Amazon, or the dying of the last northern white rhino, or the extinction of 30,000 species a year? What allows us to read about that and go on with life as normal? This is not asked as a accusation, but purely from curiosity. And one of the reasons that we have trouble taking that information into a deeper level, into our feeling bodies, is because we live in an ideology that says that Earth is not alive, that it is maybe a collection of life, and that this collection of life does not have the full qualities of a self. It is not a subjective, perceiving, feeling, hurting, loving being. Therefore, you could ask the naive question, why should we care about nature? Why should we care about the Amazon? Why should I care about here's my cell phone. Why should I care about this? If I ask you that, why shouldn't I just leave it out in the rain? You can say, well, Charles, it's very useful to you. That's why you should care about it. If you leave it out in the rain, then you'll have to buy a new one, and that'll be a shame. And I'll be like, okay, yeah, you're right. I should take good care of it. And it's natural to answer the question in that way when we don't see it as an actual being worthy of love. And it would be kind of weird if I said, I love my cell phone, not just because it's useful to me, but I just love it, and I sing it lullabies before I put it on airplane mode, and I'm like, that's kind of insane, because we all know that it's not a being in that way. So then if we ask, why should we care about the Amazon? And I say, well, because of the economic value of all those medicines that we can make from the plants there, or because of its role in carbon sequestration, or its production of oxygen, or like anything measurable that we can say, here is how it will benefit us. When we give that answer, we are essentially casting it into the same category as a cell phone, saying its value lies in what it can do for ourselves. That is one of the deep causes of the world-destroying machine that we know. So at first, climate change seemed like good news to environmentalists, in a way, because finally we could say, now they're going to have to do all the things that we wanted them to do. Because if we don't, bad things are going to happen. But I think that in doing that, in accepting that and using that as our narrative, we've replaced love with fear. And, in fact, there's two ways I could go with this. Substituted a smaller revolution for a deeper revolution. The deeper revolution that the ecological crisis is asking us to step into is a revolution in the basic relationship and the way that we see the rest of life. To see ourselves no longer as like the dominators and the intelligent beings that are going to impose our intelligence onto the random forces and masses that constitute nature, but instead to see ourselves as participants, contributors, and partners in an evolutionary process that's much bigger than ourselves. When we see Earth as alive, we begin asking questions like, well, what does the Earth want? What does the planet want? We have motivations to care for Earth beyond its use to us. Harking back to the early days of environmentalism, when no one was saying, save the whales because if we don't, terrible things will happen to us. It was save the whales because they are so beautiful, because they are sacred, because they are beings. We love them. And to step into that is a very deep revolution. A revolution of love. The living planet view leads to different kinds of priorities, which I really don't have time to go into very much. But when we see, I'll just say, when we see Earth as alive, we understand that its health depends on the health of its organs and tissues. The organs being things like rainforests, mangrove swamps, grasslands, coral reefs, elephants, whales, and so forth. And we understand that even if we cut down a forest here and plant a tree plantation there, or if we cut down the Amazon and compensate for the lost carbon sequestration with a giant array of solar panels, like what if we cut down all the Amazon and replaced it with solar panels and carbon-sucking machines and algae pools to make oxygen, and what if through the 90-year experiment in dousing the entire planet almost with pesticides, we have destroyed insect life. And this is one thing I got from Paul Stamets' presentation. It's just so obvious that our rush to find the cause of a problem, like the cause of colony collapse disorder, the honeybee holocaust. And it's bigger than that, actually. It's like, you guys have probably heard about the research documenting a precipitous decline in flying insect biomass around the world. It's not just honeybees that are dying. Insects are dying everywhere, which means life is dying everywhere. And we want to find the cause. It's a mite that crawls on the bee, and therefore, once we have the cause, then the solution is obvious too. You kill it, which is the basic solution template of our culture. Find the cause and fight it. Find the enemy, destroy the enemy. Find the terrorists, kill the terrorists. Crime, find the criminals, kill the criminals. Disease, find the germ. Overweight, kill the calories, suppress the appetite. Cause and effect. And that works in a linear system, but not in a living system where the cause, what is the cause of the honeybee collapse? Is it killing the bears, which were scratching the trees, which allowed the sap to come out and funguses form that carry antiviral compounds to the honeybees? Is that the cause? Like, what is the cause? The cause is everything. The cause is the entire relationship. So yeah, from the living planet view, we're invited into a release of this reductionistic war thinking, which we're deeply programmed into in this culture to find the enemy. And then, when we can accept the livingness of Earth, which is hard in a room like this, because there's not a lot of nature except for ourselves in this room. But when we accept the livingness and maybe even the intelligence of Earth, then we have something to love again. And we no longer have to ask why, and no longer have to reinforce the perception that our motives come from self-interest, and that we have to scare people into caring, which actually produces at best a superficial simulation of caring. But how do you make people really care? How do you access the kind of courage that is required to sacrifice the things that we need to sacrifice to enter a healing relationship with Earth? Where does courage come from? Yeah, of course, it comes from love. So part of what I'm doing is I'm offering a story, an ideology, a way of seeing Earth that kind of gives permission to trust what is innate to us, which is our love of life and our desire to serve it. Because just like every being on this planet, we're not here to survive and reproduce, fundamentally. We're here to give a gift toward the wholeness and evolution of everything. This is inherent to our humanity. When we can see people in that way and hold that story of them, rather than holding the story that we're programmed to find an enemy, but to even look at whatever, the Monsanto executive, or Donald Trump, or whoever we're tempted to, yeah, here's the one to fight, here's the enemy to overcome, and then we will have won. But if we can, that might be okay if we were stronger than the enemy, if we were stronger than the military, industrial, pharmaceutical, educational, NGO, industrial complex. Yeah, maybe we'd be able to win a fight. But let's face it, those that we have installed in power with their media, their money, their armed forces, and so on, their surveillance apparatus, all of that, in conventional terms, they have the power. If they are irremediably evil, it is hopeless. And if we hold that story of them, we create an invitation for them to be that. Any story that you hold about somebody creates an invitation for the person to step into that story. But if we can look at somebody and say, instead of saying, I know you, you greedy son of a bitch, I know what you want, you're just in it for the money. So here's some reasons why you should adopt pro-ecological behavior, because of the PR benefits, and because you'll avoid legal sanctions and so forth. Instead of saying that, what if we look at people and say, I know who you really are. You desire to serve life on Earth. And it might be, and why aren't you doing that? Why? With curiosity. What is the totality of your circumstances? Your ideological circumstances, the trauma that you've received in your life that cuts you off from your feeling body. What are the totality of the circumstances? And when we go there, the first thing that happens, to me usually, is that I have no idea what to do, which is an improvement over thinking I know what to do. but actually not knowing what to do. So if I know that I don't know what to do, that this problem is so big and so all-encompassing, the circumstances that, I mean, what are the circumstances that propel you to do things that are not in service of Earth? It's not like just that you're bad. It might be your economic circumstances. It might be being inserted into a infrastructure that demands that you drive all the time. What are the circumstances? And you get to the entire system of capitalism. You get to the deep myths of our civilization, the separate self in a world of other, governed by mechanistic forces. Like, I don't know what to do about that. But I find that when I am able to see a truth that lodges in a different story, I have access to creativity. And I discover the ways to invite people into the story that I am holding about them. This intense polarization around the climate issue leaves people confused sometimes when they read my book, and they're like, hold on, which side are you on? Because I wouldn't say skeptical, but less confident in the conventional narrative and the computer models that project runaway warming. I think that it's much more likely that we're going to experience derangement as the organs and tissues of Gaia lose their vitality and are unable to regulate the physiology of this planet. And we could see rapid warming, we could see cooling, we could see fluctuations. We are already seeing vast disruptions in the hydrological cycle, floods and droughts that are caused by soil degradation and deforestation and the destruction of the food chain, starting with the insects and so on and so forth. So people are like, yeah, which side are you on? And I had an interesting encounter a couple nights ago speaking on this topic where a man had prepared very well with quotes from articles I'd written and stuff like that, making a very angry case that I was a climate denier. And we had a back and forth about it. One of the things that, so I have like 2 minutes to finish telling this story, so I'm not going to elaborate on it, but I'm going to say, like, at the end, it ended with a hug, and I hope you're not offended. And I'm like, no, I'm not offended, because nothing you said was offensive, because what I see is somebody who cares so much that you're willing to stand up in an audience where everybody is, really into what I'm saying, and to like say this thing that's scary to say and to be shaking with anger and to do it anyway. Like, that's the kind of caring that we need, because we will inevitably, all of us, encounter these moments where we decide what it is we're going to serve. Are we going to serve the more beautiful world our hearts know is possible? Or are we going to serve being right? Are we going to serve getting approval? Are we going to serve a self-image? Are we going to serve being on the right side? And we can never predict when these moments arise. But they inevitably arise as we come into greater clarity and give attention to our desire to up our game and our level of service to this earth. So I need to wrap it up, so. I guess I will ask you just to give a moment of your attention to the knowledge that you already have, hard that it is to access in this room, that Earth is alive, to your willingness to offer a sacrifice of something that you may have held dear. of being right, of being approved of being on team good in the battle between team good and team evil. And not to vow to let go of that, but simply to put attention on the readiness to be at a higher level of service, and attention on the readiness to receive the help that we need to see Earth as alive through all of the programming. Like intellectually, yeah, of course, I believe Earth is alive. I believe Earth is conscious and intelligent, and the whole cosmos too. Intellectually, I've accepted that. But the programming is so deep, I do not know how to undo that in myself. So together we give attention to our readiness, to our willingness to receive the information that opens us up. The information that comes in and forms who we are. And then to be carriers of that information and walking invitations into the story of love. Yeah, thank you.